The national news of late has been scattered with stories of racial insensitivity, from racist chants from members of a major university fraternity to police shootings of unarmed African-American youths to the wounding of police officers during a demonstration. On the program today, we're going to take a closer look at how these national stories shape the way agencies in our area who are charged with enforcing civil rights. How's it affecting what they do? Outlook is next. Hello and welcome to Outlook. I'm your host, Barbara Deeb. Well, the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights is the state authority charged with enforcing the Kentucky Civil Rights Act and federal civil rights laws. So what that means is the law has made it illegal to discriminate against people in the areas of employment, financial transactions, housing, and public accommodations on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, gender, or disability. But if you take a look at what's going on around the nation these days, it makes you wonder, how do these people do their jobs? We're going to talk about it as we welcome to the program Alice Gatewood-Waddell, who is the director of the Bowling Green Human Rights Commission. Thanks for being here. In addition, Abraham Williams joins us. He's the director of the Housing Authority of Bowling Green. When I say how you do your jobs, you've always done your jobs, but it just seems like when you have situations like this, kind of casting a shadow over what you're doing, that's got to have an effect. So talk a little bit about that, if you will.
Looking at today's civil rights, and my job has changed so much.
Now, you've been there, what, about 20 years, you were saying?
20 years.
Okay.
And back, finished school about 71, 72, and there was a thing called affirmative action. And again, you had a chance to find a decent job if you came out of college. Things have changed so much now. We're going back past the 70s, and it's hard for young blacks or other minorities to find employment. At will state, no reason to have to hire a person, most qualified, all those things are in effect now. And it's hurting a lot of our young people from finding gainful employment.
What about you, before we get into some of this?
A lot of the incidents, as far as our agency has been, played an impact on us as far as promoting awareness and being proactive in our communities. And by that I mean bringing people together, groups together to have dialogue and to promote mutual understanding between groups, between citizens, law enforcement, citizens and the school system, citizens and those who are in position for employment.
You know, okay, so let's back up. That's a lot of stuff to take in all at once. The bottom line is, and this is a very poignant thing that you've said. So you've been with the Housing Authority for nearly 20 years, but you remember back in the 70s, and you think things were better in the 70s, and maybe we're going in a direction that's not so good.
Not necessarily better. It was that we was able to achieve a lot more in the Senate because of affirmative action, because of the civil rights movement, and people would do it. What I found out throughout the years, most people want to do the right thing.
In the end, right.
They want to do the right thing.
Get up in the morning and do the next right thing.
But most of the time, people who are doing their hiring are afraid to do things because they're so worried about what their friends are going to say about them if they're first. We just have to give people a reason to do the right thing. And that's what we're trying to do, myself and Alice. We're just trying to give them a reason. Let's give other people a chance. There's nothing wrong with being the first. And as old as I am, I'm still being the first in a lot of different things, and it shouldn't happen. And I finished school back in the late 60s. I still shouldn't be the first on this board or that board. Things should have changed, and people should just realize there's a lot of talented people around. All they're looking for is just an opportunity.
So it's almost as if things are going in a backward trajectory to a certain extent.
Yeah, and one of the problems is things are so systematic and stem from those things that for example, there's not a level playing ground. We have some people that start here that's disenfranchised, and then we have those that begin here. And we have to be more intentional about getting those people here initially. So opportunity is lacking for those that's disenfranchised, and it's hard. It's not impossible to be successful, but it's hard, and it's hard to catch up to that level and to be successful. And we have to be more intentional about making those opportunities available and being fair.
And talking about employment, so you're saying everyone needs to start off level playing field.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing out there in our region is that that's not always the case, that there are those people who are starting out here and others who are way back there,
Yeah.
that can't even get to the starting gate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we know that, we see that, we hear it. How do we make that happen?
Well, I think there needs to be a lot more opportunities for job training, and because we see people going for jobs and they're told, they use the word qualified so much, not qualified, not qualified. How do you get qualified? Even when there are qualifications in place, then there's not enough experience.
So it just seems like no matter what, they keep coming up against the checklist that's not there.
Yeah, but job training, I think, is very important for people that's entering into the job market. And that would be
Regardless of
them.
your race, your religion,
Right,
or your
right.
color.
Because jobs now, when you see them advertised, they are so narrowed
Specific?
down and specific to
Yeah.
skills that you have to have them. And we have to start with our middle school, elementary, high school. We really need to start educating the students to be able to fulfill these requirements.
Now, we would be naive at this table to say that we could ever go back to the way it was. Not going to happen. But what I'm hearing you say is that even as we move forward, we're still bringing with us that luggage. There's still a lot of that baggage that's going with us on this trip.
To me, it's just good business to be inclusive. Coming from Alabama, I never went to school with a white kid, all black teachers, and that's all I knew. And then every now and then you associate with whites, and if they see you together eating lunch or dinner or something, it was almost a taboo. But again, coming here and see all the different nationalities and cultures, it just opened my eyes to an entirely different world. I went to school, and during the Vietnam era, I was so afraid to go to the war, and I told a lady who worked with me who was Vietnamese, I said, we lost 60,000 Americans in that war in Vietnam. And she looked at me and she said, I lost 1 million of my people. So then you start thinking, and you need to, we're afraid of what we don't know.
Fear.
So all you have to do is sit down and talk to people. And I found out doing my job, we're the same. We're identical same. We want to eat, sleep, and have a nice place to live and take care of our kids. That's all. And so let's just be fair with everyone and give them an opportunity. Don't judge because of the color of their skin, their nationality, their race, or their religion.
You know, you bring up the importance of, and something that the Human Rights Commission, we're talking with Alice Gatewood Waddell and Abraham Williams, and you're on the board of the Bowling Green Human Rights Commission.
No,
in addition, you
Just
consultant.
a friend. They just use me all the time. So.
But he serves as the director of the Housing Authority of Bowling Green. But you were talking about the importance of a simple conversation, a discussion, where you can bring citizens together with this group that maybe they fear, and actually open a dialogue. Okay, you implemented that.
Right.
Did it work?
It was a beginning. It was a beginning, and it was an indication that there is interest in the community to have a dialogue, to talk about the challenges and ways that we can improve our community. We all realize that it's not going to be done in one forum, and we will continue to look at the data when we compile everything that we felt came to light through our conversations and see what direction we can go, and to make that beneficial to us in the community, and just not drop the ball and continue to look at those problems that were identified and make improvements.
You know, in the Housing Authority of Bowling Green, you mentioned just the number of different ethnicities and nationalities that we now have in this area.
Yes.
I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I think people would be amazed. Like, what are you looking at
We
there?
have almost 18 different nationalities that live with the Housing Authority of Bowling Green. 18 different nationalities, yes.
So with that, you know, I have trained international journalists from different countries. I mean, in addition to reaching out to them at a level that they can understand and appreciate, you have to learn their cultural norms. You know, and there are some nuances that one has to learn to understand. Have you found that to be the case at the Housing Authority?
I found that it's still the basic needs. And again, you find the people, you like to hear about Muslims. I work with a group of Muslims every day, the best people in the world. They're nice, they're kind, and they just want to take care of their families. I work with Buddhists. I work with so many different religions that we don't even talk about religion. If when we have a dinner, we hold hands and we pray. And we pray to our God and our Christ, and they accept us, and we sit down there and have a nice dinner together. We're all as one. Whatever you're looking for is what you'll find. If you're looking for hate, you'll find it. Just quick story. We're taking some kids to Knoxville to play basketball. We do a Southeastern basketball tournament with all public housing kids. And we was in Wendy's and had brought our kids all red jackets, and they had the jackets on. A white female came in, sort of middle-aged, with her daughter. And they'd get to the door, and they'd go back, and they'd get to the door, and they'd go back, and finally came into Wendy's, and they sit down there, and like they was afraid. I don't know what they was afraid of, because it was 10 black guys and myself and 2 other people. And when she got relief, she got up and she said, "I need to apologize." She said, because when I saw all these black kids with red hoodies on, I didn't know what to think about where I was sitting. And she said, but I heard them say yes, sir, and no, sir, and yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and you all are doing a wonderful job. Same group of kids we came to Nashville to eat, and there was a young black man, 24 years old, go to Tennessee State, and he walked up to us, and he said, "Man, I appreciate it, and here y'all $20 to pay for some food." Same kids, but it all depends what you're looking for. But the lady came up and apologized to us. She didn't have to do that. And she said, "I prejudge you all, and I feel so sorry in front of my daughter for saying things like that." So it's whatever you're looking for. If our employees are looking for a good person of a different race or culture to bring him better business, he'll hire that person.
It's all about what you're looking for. And you know, there are some preconceived notions that we carry with us in that luggage that we talked about taking with us. We're going to talk a little bit more about that on Outlook as we take a look at race relations and the role of a Human Rights Commission and a housing authority in a community like ours when Outlook continues right after this. Stay with us. Outlook continues. I'm your host, Barbara Deeb. How much do you know about your area Human Rights Commission or your housing authority? Well, we have 2 representatives here in our studio as we take a look at what's happening around the nation with race relations and how does that impact the jobs that they do in our region. We are rejoined by Abraham Williams, who is the director of the Housing Authority of Bowling Green. In addition, Alice Gatewood-Waddell joins us, a very talented painter in another life, but she serves as the director of the Bowling Green Human Rights Commission. Thank you for being here. I'm a huge admirer of your artwork, by the way.
Thank you.
But that's for another show. Let's get back to what we were talking about before the break. And if you're just joining us, we were talking about preconceived notions that maybe most of us carry with us in certain situations. You referenced an instance where you had some nice young men with you, but because they happened to be wearing red hoodies, that several people who encountered them had different reactions.
Yes.
Talk about how that affects just everything that you do with the Housing Authority, these preconceived notions.
We never know who we're going to meet coming in. It might be a housewife who had a middle income person who was married, husband get up and walk away, and they come to us. We might get a person from the Salvation Army who's coming to us with nothing, or a homeless person come off the bridge. We have to be so careful of how we treat people because, again, that could be me and my family tomorrow.
Exactly.
Couple of paychecks, and it could be us. Couple of accidents, couple of divorces, couple of lawsuits. We're there. I don't think we need to judge people according to there's 3 ways we judge people. And the 3 ways we judge people is by their race. When we see them automatically, we're going to judge them. We're going to judge them where they live, their addresses, and we're going to judge them about how much money they make. I don't care what color you are. If you make some money, you're in a different category. If you're black, you're not white, but you're gray. It's just different standards. You take our kids who go to certain schools, and once they give their addresses, they're going to look at them a different way. If I live on Gordon Avenue, okay, you live in the projects. So they look at you different. They expect different things from you. Or I live in Bent Tree. They expect different things from you if you live in Bent Tree.
How do you get past that, though? I mean, that's the nature of human beings.
But I tell my kids, you don't have project stamped on your head. It's the way you act, the way you conduct yourself, and how people are going to treat you. So you must look good all the time. We used to fuss all the time about boys putting their britches up. I don't tell them to put their britches up no more. For what? I tell them if I can raise their expectation, their britches are going to come up with their expectation. If I can help educate them and take them different places where they've never been, that's my thing, is exposure. They need to see things that they just saw on television. Physically need to go touch it. I take our kids to the Science Museum. We take them to the Civil Rights Museum all over. And we take them historical black college tours. And we take them different places, not just the black kids, the white kids, the Indian kids, all the other kids, and we show them you can be this person. But a lot of times, we need to stop telling them. They need to see it.
It's expectations.
It's expectation.
It's expectations. And sadly, with the Human Rights Commission, expectations are not always met when someone feels like they've maybe been discriminated against when it comes to housing, when it comes to employment, and other areas. So the Human Rights Commission is there as a state authority that's charged with enforcing these civil rights.
Right.
So how does one then come to you and say, you know, because often it's a he said, she said. Okay?
Right, right.
Well, I felt. Maybe they come in with this feeling of I'm feeling discriminated against, and maybe the person who did the alleged discriminating wasn't doing anything at all other than being who they are. So how do you work that?
So when you file a complaint, you have to be able to explain how you feel that you were treated differently from someone else who's in the same position. If it's based on race, where you may be able to cite another, say, an employee that was treated different in the same situation that you are. And it's hard, and some
To
people,
prove.
yeah,
Very
and some
difficult.
people get discouraged and they don't follow through. But if it's investigated, there are ways, and people are trained to investigate, and a lot of information can come out in an investigation. So we really encourage people to follow through on their complaints. There's
So let's take a scenario, okay?
Okay.
Now you've got the Housing Authority of Bowling Green where people have to qualify to receive housing there, okay? So that's different. They have to go through a process.
Right.
But I'm just someone looking for an apartment, and I go and I look and I feel like I've been discriminated against because of my color or my race. So then I would call you and say, you know, I don't feel good about this. How do I prove it? And so you're saying, you know, it's not impossible, but it can be difficult to prove.
Yeah, but we don't even say it's difficult to.
Never use those words.
No, we encourage people to come into the office, talk about it, file a complaint. We really try to have an extensive conversation. Sometimes it's not discrimination, it's bad business practice. We have to draw the line to see where that falls. But we even go as far as maybe in a housing situation, we may do a testing where that
Send in like a
send
mock
in another person
renter. Yeah.
and fill out ask for application, somebody of a different race or different sex, somebody with children, somebody without children, and to see if that office manager or whoever is
Treats
in
them
contr-
any differently.
Yes,
Yeah.
treats them any different.
So that's one
and
way.
And that's a way of investigating. Sometimes people just don't know the laws, you know.
Okay, so in other words, ignorance of the law, right?
Yeah.
We've always heard that, but sometimes they don't maybe
Yeah.
know that they're breaking the law by some of the things
and that's
that
why
they're doing.
part of the things that we do is education and outreach as well. And when we do that well and continuously, it helps to prevent so many complaints from coming into the office.
How many complaints do we get in this area at the Bowling Green Human Rights Commission?
Well, we get them in different categories. There's housing, there's public accommodation, there's employment. Over the course of a year, housing and employment has the most, I would say, maybe with housing anywhere between 30 and 40. Doesn't sound like a high number, but if it's about you, it's high.
It's a high number,
you know,
sure.
One is high if it's big enough and it's about you.
Yeah.
Employment, next in line, I don't know exactly how many, somewhere maybe between 20, 25. Some of those complaints are things that I am, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but unfortunately still happens today. Complaints about inappropriate language.
Like in a workplace or
in
environment
the workplace,
like that? Yeah.
inappropriate jokes.
And what you're saying, and it's kind of what you're speaking to earlier in the first half of the show, you know, how far we've come and yet how far we have to go. And, you know, in some ways we've regressed. So you're saying here in this day and time that we're still getting complaints about inappropriate discussions.
And you would think people would know better by now and know what's right and what's wrong. But it still occurs.
It still occurs, so people can file a complaint. So once the complaint is filed, then you have to go through the investigation. Are they often resolved, able to be resolved?
Often the first steps is to try to resolve without going through a lot of legal
Avenues.
And we are intake office. So basically, we take in complaints and make sure that they consist of enough information to warrant an investigation. And then the complaint is passed on to the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, which has legal people on staff.
Powers. So I got to ask this: the amount of complaints that you've had over the last couple of years, when this national spotlight seems to be aimed at race relations in our country, have you seen an increase in the number of complaints
Since
in the last couple of years?
last couple of years, well, I've only been there 2 years, so it's
Oh,
kind of
let's
hard.
go with 2
it's
years
kinda,
then.
kind of hard to gauge.
Yeah.
I would say pretty much steady, just about
Steady.
the same. We really try to educate the public as much as possible. That's being proactive. We try to put a lot of emphasis on fair housing laws.
And
you know,
bring attention to it.
citizens' rights, and people listen. I've worked with Abraham's programs, and as we do fair housing, education and outreach there are people that's been maybe in brass, and when we do those programs, they remember. They remember what they've been told, and it's good because they can protect themselves. You know, if
It's
a landlord.
empowering is what it is. It's empowering. And speaking of empowering and women, we're going to be talking about the Women of Achievement Award Ceremony, which is something that the Bowling Green Human Rights Commission has done for a number of years. It's a way to recognize women. Tell us a little more.
Okay, it's a way to recognize women and to celebrate women for the roles that they played in history. History has, as in many instances, like minorities, have not put a lot of emphasis on the roles that women played in history, just been left out. We focus on military stuff when we talk about history, economics, just things that mostly involve the male species.
So this is an opportunity, and this is exciting because they have women first, they have women in education, women in science.
Business, arts, science and health, all kind of categories. We added a new one last year, which is a native daughter. That is a person that was born in Bowling Green but has left Bowling Green and gone to other parts of the country or world, and it's doing outstanding things. So we will be recognizing someone
Those
in that
women
area.
in that category. That's exciting. So this is the 23rd annual Women of Achievement Awards. It's going to be held Saturday, March 28th, and there's still time to be a part of that. It's going to be a luncheon this year as opposed
Yes.
to a dinner. So we're going to put up a number for the Human Rights Commission at the end of the show if
Great.
people want more information. We're just about out of time. Alice Gatewood Waddell, thank you for taking your time. Abraham Williams, always a pleasure to have you in the studio. But as we wrap up this discussion related to race relations, as we speak, current race relations in our region of the country, because people often look at our area, the Bowling Green or the Barron River area, and say, you know, y'all are kind of isolated there. You know, you don't really reflect the trends of the nation. But in this instance, the trends of the nation are affecting us, aren't they?
They are. I tell our people that live in the Housing Authority and other folks, stop making excuses. I don't want to hear excuse. I've been known as a militant and Uncle Tom at the same time. But I just tell them all the time, the young white female who got 2 kids, who's struggling, or the black female got 2 kids, they have problems. But take away the excuses. We try to take away all the excuses. Well, I'm not educated. Go back to school. Well, I didn't get that job because I didn't look good. Well, go fix yourself up. Stop making excuses all the time. If you're not prepared this time, go back and get prepared the next time. We'll help you with your job resume, your interview skills, and everything else. I don't believe in excuses. If I don't get a job this time, I guarantee you I'm going to get it the next time. So that's what we try to tell our young people. The world is not fair. It is not going to treat you fair. Don't you expect to be fair. You be more than prepared the next time when you go for that interview or for another job.
There you go. Stop making excuses.
And I just hope that one thing that we take away from everything that's happening across the country is everything starts with yourself. If everybody would just examine their own hearts and decide, it's simple, do the right thing.
And we'll leave it with those words of wisdom. Alice Gatewood Waddell, Abraham Williams, no more excuses and do the right thing. And that is joining us. Thanks for joining us. I'm Barbara Deeb. Until next time, thanks.